Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, March 24th, and welcome to the Sports Note on YouTube. Tonight, we kick off the Sweet 16 in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Naturally, 4 games on the docket tonight, but what we're going to talk about today is probably the most intriguing one, and it's actually happening tomorrow night. Yes, the defending champion Baylor Bears are out after surprisingly being upset by North Carolina last weekend in the round of 32. Gonzaga going for redemption tonight. But again, that most intriguing matchup is 11th-seeded Iowa State taking on 10th-seeded Miami of Florida. This is the first time 2 double-digit seeds have actually met in a regional semifinal since Gonzaga was 11 and Syracuse was 10 in 2016. Ironically enough, the last 2 March Madness tournaments have actually featured 4 double-digit teams getting into the round of 16. So joining Iowa State and Miami, you've also got 11th-seeded Michigan and the Cinderella 15th-seeded St. Peter's College, who knocked off Kentucky in the first round and made all right with the world because, let's all face it, the tournament is a better place without Kentucky in it. This also is, for the way that Iowa State started the year, for them to actually end up where they are now is really no surprise to anyone. The Cyclones started out 12-0 and finished 20-12 going into the tournament, but they were only 4-7 against top 25 teams and finished 7-11 in the Big 12. They lost their last 3 going into the Big 12 tournament, but two of their losses on the year were to Kansas by a combined 10 points. One of those was a 1-point loss, and the other was a 9. The Cyclones have not made a Final Four since 1944. And if they beat Miami tomorrow night, they might actually get their shot against Kansas in the regional final, which actually would be yet another Kansas trip to the Final Four under Bill Self, or it would be T.J. Otzelberger basically all but cementing his name on the Coach of the Year, the National Coach of the Year award. The historic thing about the Cyclones right now under Otzelberger is they were 2-22 last year and were 0-18 in Big 12 play. In 2020, before the season was canceled by the COVID pandemic, they were 5-18, and all 5 of those wins were in Big 12 conference play. So naturally, by doing the math, 0-5 out of conference. What's garnering Iowa State all this success right now is what they're getting out of their backcourt right now, and they don't have guys that are jumping off the page, at least in terms of both of them. You'd figure one would be up there and the other would be sitting basically right behind. Iowa State's doing it with a lot of defense. They've won 2 tournament games without scoring 60 points in either, which has actually not been done in a number of years. But what's going on with Iowa State right now is their senior point guard, Isaiah Brockington, is actually with his 3rd school in his collegiate career. He started out at St. Bonaventure, transferred in 2019 to Penn State, and then transferred again back in the fall to Iowa State. He actually entered the NBA draft last year, but then withdrew his name prior to signing with an agent and before the draft occurred, so he was allowed to actually come back. And then the Big 12 allowed him to play immediately since he had actually earned enough credit or enough waivers to where he actually wouldn't have to sit out or redshirt. He was named to the Big 12 All-First Team and also was the newcomer of the year after averaging 17.1 points and 6.8 rebounds, scored a season-high 30 against Xavier, who was ranked at the time in the NIT preseason tip-off, and then he scored a season-high 35 against West Virginia back on February 23rd. Again, right where they needed him to be, boosting all the Cyclones' momentum after a pretty rough stretch to kind of get them back onto the right track, although unfortunately, again, leading into that 3-game losing streak going into the Big 12 tournament. He has struggled pretty well in the postseason games that Iowa State has played. He only scored 7 points in the Big 12 final against Texas Tech. He was 3 of 16 from the field, and the Cyclones were blown out in that game. He scored 19 in the opening round win against LSU, but only shot 6 of 16 from the floor. He did score 10 points in the upset win over Wisconsin in the second round, but again, only 4 of 15 from the field. The best way I can actually describe Brockington is, if anyone have seen the movie Miracle about the 1980 Olympic U.S. hockey team with Kurt Russell, there's a famous line that head coach Herb Brooks says about goaltender Jim Craig, even though his own goaltender where he was coaching in college just a couple of months earlier, Steve Janicek, had just won a national championship. And assistant coach and general manager Craig Ramsey said, his game's been off since its mom died. I'm not saying that Brockington's mom died, but the famous retort from Brooks says, you ever see him when his game is on? And that basically puts Brockington to a T. The fact that Brockington is being paired right now with Gabe Kalsher in the backcourt. Kalsher is also a Minnesota transfer, so neither one of these guys were on the roster last year. He scored 22 points in that game against Wisconsin back on Sunday to pick up the slack and lead to the upset. And Kalsher's only scored 9.5 points on average through this season. The Cyclones were one of the last teams to get into the field of 68 as an at-large. They were the last team to get in from the Big 12. They finished with the exact same 7-11 in-conference record as Oklahoma. Oklahoma finished 19-16 and went to the NIT. Iowa State right now has a very real chance to make the Elite Eight. And with, again, getting back to Otzelberger, how he's not in the conversation after turning this program around the way that he has. He spent 2 years as a head coach at UNLV, didn't make a postseason tourney, went to the first round in his first 2 years as a head coach in his career at South Dakota State in 2017 and 2018, went to the NIT in 2019, had a 29-30 record in his 2 years at UNLV, and just jumped from that kind of mid-major WAC Mountain West Conference type school to a Power 5 school, and has really got his team poised to make a pretty decent run and see whether or not this can keep up. If Kansas gets upset by Providence and Iowa State wins, there's a very good chance that Iowa State has a very, very good possibility. I don't want to say a puncher's chance, but I would actually even put them as a favorite over Providence, with as streaky as Providence has been at times this year with what I've seen of them. And the fact that Iowa State is locking everybody down at this point. It's the game against Wisconsin, nobody gave them a shot in hell in that game. Wisconsin should have won that game by double digits instead of going out and losing the way that they did. But let me know what you guys think. Who is your Cinderella of the teams left in the field? Who's your favorite going forward here now that now that Baylor's out of the field and Arizona looked very, very shaky as well? But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Our Wise Guys Sports show that was supposed to be coming up Saturday the 26th has actually now been postponed. Something came up with my partner Mike Martinez, but we're going to try and get that rescheduled for you guys as soon as possible. And if you haven't seen it, go back and watch our draft show from last week with Alex from Row 7, especially with all the moves that happened in the NFL. There's talk that we may redo the show. However, with all the chaos that is still going on, especially now with Tyreek Hill getting moved, it might actually be more beneficial for us to do more of a roundtable after the draft or just before it than to do a whole draft preview. But let me know what you guys would actually, like to think. Go check out Alex's show, the Row 7 podcast. Go check out Mike on the Big Rican show. Go check out our friend Willie Epstein from the Shakeback Media Group, and we will see you guys very, very soon. Look for the blog to come up a little bit later on this afternoon or early tonight before the games as well. Take care, and we'll see you soon.